So Ten Hag looks to be the favourite for Manchester United, but exactly how will United play under Ten Hag? That's what we're going to find out today. I'm joined by Abdul. We're looking at his tactics, his formation, and how United's players can suit his new system. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe. This is Abdul. How you doing, mate?
I'm not too bad, mate. How
Good. Good. We've got you down here because we want you to take us through Ten Hag, basically, top to bottom, formation, tactics, how he plays, who he's going to get the best out of, and how this can work at Manchester United should he become United's next manager. It's exciting, isn't it? It is an exciting
It is,
time.
I think, because usually this stage of the season, in recent seasons anyways, post Sir Alex, we've always got this period where we're either chasing top four or, you know, you're going for like the FA Cup or whatever. It just feels like with the expectations, especially on top of that, the season's finished so early, you've got to look forward to something and just look forward to, you know, who's going to take over and what might change for Manchester United in the future, because everything just seems so down now. So, yeah, it is good to look at what Erik Ten Hag can do.
Yeah, definitely. So let's get into it then. Talk to me about Ten Hag. Obviously, he's been managing at Ajax. It's his main sort of only real big job.
Yeah.
Talk to me about his formation. How does he like to play? How does he like to set things out? For people who don't know Ten Hag, give me, to start with, the basics on who he is and how he sets his teams out.
I think, of course, a lot of Manchester United fans are fond of Ten Hag. You know, me, you know, being guilty as well of not watching enough of him to, you know, give you the complete, you know, shebang, how exactly from the keeper all the way to the striker play. But I think from what I've watched, I watched the Dortmund game because I was very impressed with that game. You know, I watched that game in full. And when you're watching that Ajax team, just so dominant, when the ball comes out of that Dortmund line, and I think it was the 4-0 that they won in Amsterdam, you know, they recover the ball very quickly. So again, you got the sense of, you know, that aggressiveness in their play, which is needed in the modern football. Also, they've got this possession-based style as well, which Erik Ten Hag has implemented. I won't say it's completely possession-based. You know, there's a bit more to it. But I think there is a bit more control with Erik Ten Hag compared to some of, you know, the other top managers in Europe. You know, you look at, obviously, Pep's the top guy for that. But then you look, Klopp's got, you know, in games, certain games where Liverpool take complete control with the ball. But other than that, there's not many managers that currently have that. Nagelsmann, I think, again, by in its moments, it's like some games here and there. And that's why I'm impressed with Ten Hag, because I feel like it's not just having the ball and boring you to death. You know, with Erik Ten Hag, it feels like there's purpose when they've got the ball. And, you know, we'll look straight into, you know, that starting 11 and how I think the reason why we'd start that, you know, with that team. You know, you've got, I think, Dean Henderson from the goalkeeper from the get-go. I think Dean Henderson will start because I just can't see, you know, De Gea last game, wonderful save. You know, it was one of them where you just got to clap it. Absolutely world class. Yeah. And that obviously, I'm still excited when De Gea makes those saves. It's just your fingers going back at the net and he saves it. But, you know, when we look at that in the Leicester game, he will make those saves, but I think overall, Ten Hag doesn't strike me as the manager that will, you know, steer away from what he needs to build as a base. And I feel what he's done with Onana, what he's done in general with Ajax, with the goalkeepers, is wanting them to come out, wanting them to get involved in the build-up, be almost a third centre-back at times. And I think we've seen that more in the last few years. So I'm not sure, maybe in this season I've not noticed it as much when I've watched Ajax, but again, I've got to watch more of them, you know, in the league. But from what I've watched in the Champions League, it's not been heavily required of the goalkeeper to step in. But I think if we're looking at Ajax at their peak and what worked well for them, Onana played a big role, you know, always coming off his line, very aggressive. And when I'm looking at it, I think, you know, I mean, Dean Henderson was linked to Ajax, you know, from the Telegraph or whatever. It was like at the start of the season. Not sure how legit that is, but then that could be also a thing where you're like, does he come in and he plays him? And I think even if it's not Dean Henderson, we can expect, you know, a signing of a goalkeeper, because I honestly can't see him starting with a goalkeeper who's going to be rooted to his line. But yeah, outside of that, I think the thing that I want to sort of dive into, we'll look at the 11 again in the end, is building relationships from, you know, the right centre to the left. And the two that I want to look at is, you know, first of all, Dalot and Jadon Sancho for me on the right side. Now, the reason why I highlight Dalot, is because, if we look at his games in February there, he's created 8 chances in 4 games in Feb. And I feel like in that month, you look at the Middlesbrough game, some great long passes over the top. Then he started, to get that stable form, recovers the ball, like I've mentioned many times when I've spoken on his, recovers the ball in the middle of the park very well. So with Diogo Dalot, I see a lot of the Mazraoui thing, where Mazraoui took years to build on. And we're going to look at Mazraoui in a sec. But with Diogo Dalot, I feel like he's someone that could pick up a lot under Ten Hag and be taken to another level. And I think I see a lot of technical ability in his game. And we're starting to see that intensity as well off the ball, knowing when to attack the space, knowing which areas to pick up. It feels like he's one of them players that could really do with some guidance. And he'd surprise a few people under the right manager, to be honest, because of his technical ability.
Do you think as well that he's the sort of player that would thrive under a sort of a higher load of instruction? Because someone like Luke Shaw, we've seen, tends to be at his best maybe when he's got less instruction, when it's a little bit more kind of you go and do your thing, like under Solskjaer. Under Jose, when it was very much here's where you stand, here's what you do, here's what we do in transition, he seemed to struggle a little bit with those instructions. Do you think Dalot's someone that can thrive under those conditions? Because Ten Hag is very here's what you do and here's when you do it.
I think the thing is with Ten Hag and other modern managers now, a lot of the way, and we spoke off camera before this, I was saying how like I was impressed with what Klopp did with Joe Gomez, for example, on the weekend. Like Trent wasn't there and you just see him whip in this unbelievable cross. The guy's basically a centre-half, like this big centre-half. The reason that happens is because the system and the structure in place allows Joe Gomez, for example, in that instance, even though Trent's out of the team, he's still going to have that space on the right-hand side. He's still going to have the awareness and know what to do. And I think this is where it's like, with the Luke Shaw thing, I think he struggled with Jose, but I think Jose, he just had a complete different style. I think it was outdated. As much as I love what Jose's done in the past, I feel like it was just overlapping that period where currently managers, they work on maximising each player. When I'm watching actually Erik ten Hag and what he done with Daley Blind, that Borussia Dortmund game, one of the best players on the pitch, Daley Blind, playing at left back, coming out every single time the ball would come out, he'd aggressively win it on the halfway or further up, and then whether he'd create a chance, play a fantastic long ball or switch the ball across. Those are characteristics, I should say, that I feel like the likes of Dalot and Shaw can have or do have, but I think they can be built on with a better structure when they've got more time on the ball, because the system allows you to do that.
Should we have a look at Mazraoui then? Because he's someone that obviously, like I said, involved in 9 goals in the Eredivisie and Champions League this season, the most he has managed in a single season.
So he's already had his best, season and goal contributions. And what impressed me with Mazraoui is when I went and researched him, yesterday, just looking at him, is the fact that this is by far like his best, most productive season. When you look in recent years, he's been very underwhelming in terms of goal and assists, like pretty much nothing.
So for the people who don't know, where does he play?
He's a right, obviously he plays at right back. He scored 5 goals, I think, in Eredivisie this season. So what he seems to do this season, which I like, which Ten Hag set him up, is play that inverted role where he's driving in. And I feel this is why I relate it to a lot to Dalot. I think if you get the right coaching, because when we played this 4-3-3 at times, which I would have loved Ralph to stick to, by the way, this season, but when we've played it, I think what Dalot's done very well is the fact that he would go into midfield almost and cover for the midfielder, and it just allows United to be in a much better shape. And I feel, again, like, I'm not bigging up as, he's going to be a great right back and this and that, but I still think he's that age where he can really, with his technical ability, with the right guidance, can switch it on. And, with Jadon Sancho, again, since February, directly involved in 6 goals in all competitions. He's really turned it on. You know what you're going to get with Jadon Sancho. Now, the issue with Jadon Sancho this season, what we've seen is obviously he's played on the left-hand side a lot of the time. And I think that has been one of the downfalls for Ralph, as much as, I think it's a difficult job for Ralph, and I do sympathise with him. I think the fact that he's not played Jadon Sancho on the right, he's got to take some fault for that, because we know Jadon Sancho is effective when he drives into the centre of the pitch. Your left winger basically turns into an inside left winger there, and he's taken up striker positions. Then your striker is also, so it feels like you got 2 number 9s there to hit. And that's the way he sort of played at Dortmund, was when he drives into the centre, you got 2 guys just drifting in where he can pick them up over the top. We've seen a lot of his assists at Dortmund, if you watch these clips, where a lot of it is that. So he can play on the right very well. And I feel like Dalot is naturally always trying to play further up the pitch. So the fact that I would have loved to just see that relationship, be built on, it might not be easy at the start, but I think especially with the fact with Luke Shaw and Marcus Rashford, it's a good time to move on to them because I wanted to make a very good point.
Yeah, let's talk about them because they're two players that have been excellent under Ole, both having poor seasons or relatively poor seasons by last year's standards. Though they're sort of players that I don't think they're both going to leave, so we need to try and get the best out of them, don't we?
Yeah, I think to be honest, speaking about it, they wouldn't want to leave, and it wouldn't surprise me if Marcus Rashford come this summer. I doubt it. I think Ten Hag's actually gonna, if he comes in, he's going to be one of the key players in his plans, in my opinion. And I'll compare him to some of the Ajax players in a second. But the main point I want to make here with Rashford is, last season he only played 54% of his games at left wing, which is quite frustrating to see because 1920 he built his whole thing, was playing on the left there. Just in the Premier League alone, being involved in 24 goals is very impressive in that season. Had his back injury that season as well. And obviously with the COVID thing, then took some time to come back in. And when he come back in, he'd found Bruno, he'd found Martial, that connection. But he still broke in there. He created multiple big chances. He was big for Martial's hat-trick, if you remember, against Sheffield, setting him up against Palace, and those relationships again being built. His overall goal scoring wasn't really there when he came back, from that back injury. But what we're seeing was his general play was still fine on the left. And towards the end of that season, we watched that sort of relationship build really well between Shaw and Marcus Rashford. And I feel like it's frustrating how that was ripped up the season after that. And I feel that's one problem Manchester United have got. And that's where it gets into, we look at the tactical aspect of Erik Ten Hag. A lot of what he does is triangles across the pitch, from the right to centre to the left, building those relationships, having different avenues of creating chances. Manchester United don't have that. We always have, you look at the last period, it's like Fred and Sancho. Pretty much since they started doing those things against Arsenal, I think at home, Sancho found Fred on the inside a couple of times. Then you look at the Leeds game. It feels like the main guys. Yeah, exactly. And it feels like they've become the main guys in the team, and this happens to Man United every season. Last season it was Bruno, Rashford. Season before, Rashford, Martial at a time, then it was Bruno by himself, and he'd come in with Martial as well. So United don't build on as a team. It's always like reliance on like two combinations, and once that burns out, fans start getting onto those players, but teams figure you out. And I think that's why you need to take more of an in-depth look at players' form rather than just going, oh, he's crap. No, there's no way Manchester United, as bad as we spend and as bad as, we've made transfer decisions, there's no way you can just go around this team and call every single player crap. No. There's genuine structural issues. Yes, there's players that clearly can't be bothered, that don't want to put in the work. Yes, as much as, I think Marcus Rashford, got shuffled, like I said, because I think this downfall started from last season. I've been seeing this from last season, and I've been saying it from last season. Once he got moved onto the right wing, did score the winner against Wolves, he shifted it onto his left and it deflected in. He still performed and he still put in the energy and still delivered the ball in the box, so there's no excuses. But if we're looking at maximising what your players do, and I think that's what Ten Hag does very well, you look at his fullbacks, looking at their best, gradually building players. Mazraoui's coming into his best season. Sebastian Haller comes into the team, looks at his best. And the next player...
Blows it away goals-wise, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's have a look at Tadic, because he's someone that was...
very impressive.
Very good and then not so good and up and down at Southampton. Obviously, always, very talented player. But then has gone to Ajax and become... one of the most kind of exciting players in Europe. Obviously, he's slightly older. He's maybe not going to come back to the Premier League now, but he's someone that Ten Hag has absolutely got the best out of, isn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt. And the reason I focus, he's still been absolutely brilliant in the last couple of years. But the reason I'm focusing on that exact season in that Champions League run was because of what he'd done exactly in the Champions League. It wasn't just the Eredivisie. We've seen some fantastic performances against the likes of Juve, against the likes of Madrid, against the likes of, I think it was Spurs as well they played. So we watched, a brilliant player in that period. And what I watched from Tadic was obviously he played at times like that false nine role, where when we get onto Donny, which was our sort of pick-up, he'd allow players to occupy spaces ahead of him, knows when to drop off, knows when to... And I feel like he really built this... Ten Hag really built this play to another level. And I can see this happening with other players, because when you look at the quality of Tadic, you make a very good point. Like, we're seeing him in the Premier League, wasn't exactly like the level we expect him to. Yeah, he goes to the Eredivisie, but when you start seeing these things at the highest level in the Champions League football against some of the best tactical coaches in world football, doing so well, managing to still use space and managing to still show his technical ability. When you look at players who've had brilliant seasons at Manchester United in recent years, whether it be Bruno, Marcus Rashford from the last couple of seasons, Luke Shaw, you look across the pitch, I think there's players that could just go another level. We need to start looking at it more as the fact that Manchester United need to build something that allows us to maximize what the players are going to do, because this thing where it's just like hero ball every time, and when I say hero, I'm not talking about just passing, but as in like, you know, you've got one guy doing it for you for like 3 months, then it's the other guy. Then football doesn't work like that anymore. You can't just have your main guy like that. The team has to work. We need
structures and patterns that the team can rely on, regardless of who's playing.
Exactly. And
like you said, it can't just be Bruno putting the ball in the box every time, or Rashford, you know, dribbling past someone and scoring. You need this triangle, that pattern, and that's what he does.
Whoever
so well,
you slot into works. And I think you make a very good point now, the fact that whoever comes in, and that's why I want to move on to Donny.
Yeah, let's have a little talk about Donny, because he's someone that over the last 2 years has been spoken about way more than he's actually played. Like, he's been a topic of conversation all the time, and yet he's barely starting for Manchester United. Yeah. Obviously signed from Ajax, very promising young player, looked like he was going to go to Real Madrid, then United signed him, played under Ten Hag already. Do you think he's got a future, and do you think he could be the sort of player that, you know, managers like to bring their sort of former players with them? Well, he's already there. So he can sort of meet Donny halfway almost and get him back in the squad, do you think?
I think the issue with Donny's situation right now is a lot of people are going to be taking on the fact of what's happened at Everton. I thought that was a horrible career decision by whoever, you know, advised him to make it, or himself. Crystal Palace would have been a lot more suited to him in terms of the style playing in the final third. So, because a lot of people are going to throw that argument at you. And the reason why I'm highlighting Donny is because the best teams, like I mentioned earlier with Liverpool, you know, with what we're seeing on the weekend, when they had Joe Gomez in, for example, over Trent, it's about having, you know, players that are coming in out of the team, but it's not really killing what you're trying to do as a side. And I think Donny, if we look at that Champions League period, when we look at this Spurs game,
so this is in the 2018-19 season.
Yeah, it's 2018-19 season.
It's past map here,
which is his best season, basically. And you look at the areas where Donny's getting the ball there, like he's almost just shifting defenses. Yeah. And then eventually he can get through on goal. And obviously, remember in that game as well, he had a shot where, you know, perfectly places it. And he almost, when you look at his goals as well for Ajax in that exact season, a lot of them he just ghosts and he finds himself in acres of space, shows his intelligence of space. He's genuinely one of the best players that I've watched in the last few years, you know, when he was at his best, from understanding space. And we've seen that in his Premier League debut for Man United against Crystal Palace. Similar type of goal again that we've seen against Juve and we've seen against Ajax. That's not by fluke, and against Spurs. That's not by fluke. That's a player that understands space.
Timing his runs, finding the space, seeing the space early and finding it and
exactly
being picked
knowing
up
when the defender's going to step out and you're going to occupy that space and you know, take advantage of the onside situation. And I think Donny does that very well. And the reason why I want to highlight so much of Donny, you know, the other game I wanted to look at as well as Juve, again, we'll see similar things, you know, that consistency, that understanding of your role, you know, with that Juventus game as well, when I'm watching it back, you know, you've just got a player who's, again, you're looking at similar passes, you know, across the pitch, into the box, you know, shorter passes, coming short, really mixing it up. And that's what I want to see from Manchester United players, more combination plays. And the last one I wanted to look at is the shots. Now, the shots in this Juve game, very impressive for me. He missed two big chances. He had two big chances, scored one in that game. Yeah. Looking at one that he just skies over the ball there. But it shows, again, playing in that role, we looked at his pass map. He was still involved deeper. He was still coming to the midfielder shot, to the wingers, to the fullbacks, but also doing a lot inside the area. Now, the reason I'm using Donny as an example, not just about him, but also about Bruno Fernandes, because you're not taking Bruno out of this team. And I think if you can get Bruno to be more competent on the ball, with a structure, with a real system in place, with him getting more space where possible, making the space for him, being the guy, I think Bruno can go another level. And I think if Erik Ten Hag can get him in more dangerous zones, and we know how lethal he is, and he's even better than Donny in that area of the pitch. On top of that, you need to have options. You know, if Bruno gets injured, and it's not even just about getting injured. The guy always burns out. We're playing him every week and whatnot. You need that option. You need that player to even come off the bench. And I thought when we signed Donny, I sort of said he'll be a super sub. And I remember I was sat watching the Palace game with one of my mates before, and I was like, you know what? I don't think Donny's going to start because I can't see how it fits in here under Oli. And then he just came off the bench and he scored. And I was like, that's what I expect from him. Yeah. We look at the Brighton game, I think it was last season as well, came off the bench, shifted the defences in the box, was involved in one of the goals as well for Man United. So he's a player that can be effective, whether starting, whether off the bench. And I think Man United need to start building a squad and building a team. And it won't surprise me if Erik Ten Hag goes in and goes, you know what, this is a very important role, because we look at Berghaus this season, we look at, you know, Donny in previous seasons, when he was at Ajax. That role, the number 10, whether they're going to play that narrow system, whether they're gonna play with wider players in general, whether they're going to stretch the pitch, whether they're gonna try and play it on the edge of the box and very tight. I think that role is very, very key for Erik Ten Hag. And if you got two players who can, open up, the teams in different types of ways, whether it's a long shot from outside the box in Bruno's style, or whether it's Donny playing himself into the area, making the runs, making runs beyond defenses. You need to have that variation, and that's where you take yourself to another level. So, I really, really hope that Donny has that place, because I think United, the reason why, and we'll finish the final point on the Manchester United 11, and why I think this is what Erik Ten Hag does now. I don't agree with the way I think it's set up. I just think this, when he comes in. Yeah.
So let's go through the team then, just quickly. Yeah. So we've got Henderson, like I said before. Yeah, we made Dalot, Varane, Maguire, and Shaw. Yeah. Then you've got Fred and a new DM next to him with a couple of signings built into this as well. Then it's Sancho on the right, Fernandes in that 10, Rashford back in the team on the left-hand side, and a new striker up front. So notably, no Ronaldo, no Pogba, no McTominay either. Talk me through that.
So when I'm looking at his Ajax team, you look at Edison Alvarez in that midfield, a player who's this complete defensive midfielder, wins the ball. I won't say he's a complete defensive midfielder, he's not really got the range of pass, but, he's a ball winner, but he's a very, very competent ball player as well. In short, when you give him the short pass, he can do very well. When you look at Gravenberch, this is why I understand Fred, and I always say this, I always push for Fred to be a high 8 player. And I've always said that. I think he's a player, when he's higher up the pitch, turns the ball over, wins it higher up pitch. That's what you want from Fred, playing in those tight spaces further up where he can take those risks, where he can pull off a scale or, look for his teammate and lose the ball if he has to there, because he can take the risk. And he plays with a lot more freedom. I think when you're looking at a 4-2-3-1 that Oli has, for example, to a 4-2-3-1 that Ten Hag uses, you look at Gravenberch, how high up the pitch he gets, how advanced he gets, and that's the role that I think Fred will have under him. And I can see Fred, with the energy that he has and the season that he's coming off on, the momentum that he's building as a player now in his form, I can see Fred staying aside and play in that pivot, but further up, have the license to have more of an advanced role, and I would love to see that from him. Now, I think Manchester United's biggest issue, and I think we'll all agree on that, is defensive midfield. Yeah. You have to have, in the modern game, we've seen teams win Champions Leagues. We've seen teams, when you look at Casemiro, he's always the best example. He's won when Zidane took over Madrid. I always said that in that season, I think they had Benitez, or I forgot it was Ancelotti, but whoever they were playing Cruz, Rodriguez, Modric or Isco, and it was just unbalanced. Yeah. Just slots in Casemiro right there. You got a real holding midfielder, changes everything for the next 3-4 years for Real Madrid. You're looking at Busquets, we know what that is for Barcelona. Frenkie de Jong as well.
Yeah, you look at all the top teams that have won either the Premier League or the Champions League in the last 5 or 6 years. They've all got a player like that.
Yeah. It feels they change a lot as well.
Kante at Chelsea, or Fernandinho and then Rodri at City, or at Liverpool it's Fabinho and Henderson doing a bit of that stuff as well. They all, Casemiro, Busquets, they all have a deep line player that either is a ball playing deep line player or a ball winning deep line defender.
And you feel like it resonates.
We don't have either of those.
We don't have either of those, and I feel like it resonates a lot with when teams pick up those players. You can actually see the switch in style and the switch in, having that extra edge as a team, because you got the ball player there who's competent, who can keep the ball, take risks when he has to, play between the lines, be progressive when he has to.
Ten Hag's going to want that.
And I think Ten Hag is going to want that. We look at what Frenkie was doing under Ten Hag. He was still playing advanced at times, but he'd receive from deep and do very well. And this is where, if Manchester United now, I've always said Declan Rice for me is a player 3-4 years ago, like when he first come into this West Ham team, someone I've always been impressed with, because every time I'd watch that West Ham team, he was improving week by week. He'd try passes between the lines. He wasn't really going for the long passes, which is something I would have liked him to build his game, and he started to do that over the last year or two. He's a player that's constantly improving. He's a combative midfielder. He's a well-rounded player, and I always said, my issue with Rice, this is even from 2 years ago when we linked to him, and everyone was like, why would you go for Rice? He's another overrated English player and whatever. My biggest problem with Rice is the fact that always been the price. You're going to pay 70, 80, 90 million at the time, we say. Now you're looking at upwards of 100 mil. But if you are going to spend £100 million, spend it on the right players. Don't spend £100 million on a star forward who's not going to change the dynamic of the team. Who you've already got star forwards who are starving to find their form again, and a lot of that is down to the fact there is no real structure in midfield. There's no real defensive midfielder who can play between the lines to advance the team forward, to drop in for the fullbacks and allow them to go forward. So for me, I think what Manchester United need to do is really go in for this Declan Rice deal. If you can't find them, and honestly, I struggle to find better options in defensive midfielders. Alvarez could be looked at from Ajax, but I'm not sure how he'd settle into the Premier League. But I think he'd do quite well, to be fair, and I think he's slotting. He'd know what Ten Hag would want off him. We've seen some big Champions League games off Alvarez as well in midfield. You know what is with Declan Rice, he's the guy that you're going to go for. If you can pick him up, pick him up. If he's the guy that you're going to spend the budget on, spend the budget on. Because a lot of the other players around the team where you like replace him. I actually feel like Erik Ten Hag comes in and he'll be like, I'm going to make you play your best football. Like we've seen he's done with these Ajax players.
Yeah.
And then you're saving money in that way, and you also got players, you know, playing at that maximum ability rather than selling them for like 10, 15 mil. You know, when you know that the quality and you know you don't want to lose them, you know you don't want to keep rebuilding in every single position. Yeah. The final point is the striker, right?
Yeah, the striker, because obviously, I mean, just quickly, Rashford's a great example of that. Someone who we know the quality's there, it's just getting that quality back out of him. That's what the manager's there to do, isn't it? So up front then, no Ronaldo, no Cavani. The Greenwood situation is what it is. United need a new striker, basically.
I think with Ronaldo, I actually feel like regardless of what happens with the Champions League, we're not going to make the Champions League football, whatever happened with Arsenal and Palace, I still don't think that matters. But I think Ronaldo actually stays next season. Right. I don't think, this is my opinion, I don't think he wants to leave, you know, having his legacy like that, you know, not winning anything, coming back to United when they're struggling. He wants to be part of that next thing in his mind. And I think Fabrizio made a point a couple of months ago, or, you know, last month, I think it was before one of the Champions League games against Atletico, and he said that how he knows his role and he knows that he can't play every week. And I think that's the case. That can be a big boost for Man United, because whatever you say about Ronaldo, Manchester United had a lot of structural issues this season that we were seeing under Ali before Ronaldo joined. You look at the Wolves game, we were open. I don't know how we won that game. You look at the Southampton game, poor. You know, the defensive midfielder picking off the defenders, picking the ball off the defenders at the wrong time. The other guy not moving forward, not opening up space in the right ways. These issues were there before Ronaldo stepped foot at Old Trafford this season. Now, he's got part to blame, because I think there's situations where we would have been better off him in games. But I think he can have a big role under
Will he work under Ten Hag?
I think he'll get goals. I think if he plays, he will 100% go.
Because he's a better striker than Sebastian Haller.
He needs to be doing more work in the area. I think coming out of the box, trying to link up play when you're not needed there. And I think this is another problem of structural issues. And once you fix these things, you'll start seeing everything come into place. Your striker won't need to drop deep as much and go out to the left and play 1-2s with Sancho. He can actually occupy spaces in the box.
Because you've got the fullbacks in the midfield.
Exactly, because there's now combinations. Yeah, because now there's combinations on the pitch that means I don't need to drop deep and feel a touch of the ball. The ball's going to arrive into the area. And that's where I think actually it might be surprising for a few people, but he might start next season and he might do well. I would still start I'm still bringing in a young target man. We're coming back into that area where you need a real ruthless goal scoring striker. It's not just about having ball players. Having Ronaldo as your option in there and having him in fit when you need him with his mentality, we've seen that Spurs game, is going to be valuable for Man United if they build a team. He's another player. I think when you look at this team, there's a lot of players that are victims to what Manchester United have done. Yes, a lot of them deserve blame. They've not put in a shift. You know, they're throwing a strop sometimes or are not up for it. But we need to start looking at the bigger picture. And I think a lot of these players level up with a real structure in place. And I think overall, like I said, you spoke, last final point is Scott McTominay. He is a player that I like. He's more someone that I see a bit like in the Jordan Henderson thing, where Henderson for Liverpool covers for the defensive midfielder because he's got the ability to have certain games there, but he's not the complete defensive midfielder, and he's still got years to build on. But I think he's the other player that's like Fred, higher up the pitch, box to box. Can find himself in the area as well, a bit like Donny in ways. If he actually played that higher 8 role, you'd be surprised at some of the goals he gets. We look at the Leeds game that he's had in the past, Wolves and so on, when he's got goals. But yeah, for me, Manchester United overall with Erik Ten Hag, a lot of players do fit in with what I think he can do. And I think he doesn't actually need to shift too much.
Do you think he's a good fit for this squad as well as the other way around?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's I don't know if you agree with it, but I think he is actually a good fit for this Manchester United team because of the shift that he's had, in the players' form at Ajax, when I'm looking at some of those players, there's higher quality in this Man United team.
Definitely.
But they can also fit this Ajax system that I'm watching every week. I think a lot of them would get it quicker. It's just about, again, it's drilling down the new ideas, getting Manchester United to control games more. That is the biggest thing with Erik Ten Hag. When you come in, Manchester United need to gain control of games a bit more. We're seeing, I think it was the Feyenoord game the other day at Ajax. People will throw that one probably at me. I went back and watched it. Ajax lost control a bit, but 2 poor defensive mistakes. But overall, when you look at that game, they kept composed, they kept controlled in that game, got back in and won the game in the end. Honestly, it's just about building relationships across from the centre of the pitch to the wide players. United need to start playing more as a team and stop focusing, like I said, on those just one player bailing them out every season. And I feel like Erik Ten Hag is the guy to do that, to build a blueprint for Manchester United to carry in the next few years.
Yeah, that's the crucial thing, isn't it? And so many managers and people around football have said that same thing. Creating a structure that the manager can come in and out of, that players can come in and out of, that above him is also working properly as well. And I think if he can bring that in maybe a little bit alongside the work Ralph's going to be doing, that's going to be absolutely massive for United going forward. And like you said, actually having a team rather than we've got 3 or 4 good players that can either win us the game or not. You've got actually 12 to 15 players that look at City, Mahrez, Sterling, Foden, Grealish, Gundogan, Jesus. They've got tons of players that can do each other's jobs almost. That's what United need, a system that works regardless of who's playing it. So great, very exciting. A lot to look forward to under Erik Ten Hag there. Is he going to get the best out of Rashford? Is he going to get the best out of Jadon Sancho? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Abdul, where can people find you?
AbdulGH_ on Twitter.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us at home, and we'll see you in a bit.